what we're going to do is we're going to take off and take out the bolt guide. Now remove the simple silver screw at the back. It's important to note that this screw has a little shoulder on it, and that shoulder, if you can see it, is what's going to line up and hold the bolt guide into place. Now before we take the bolt guide out, take a look and you'll see that it's completely flush with the back of the body. And it's important that when we put it back in that it's like that before we tighten the screw up. Now sometimes you can just pull the bolt guide off the back, sometimes it doesn't come so easy. If it doesn't come off so easily, you simply put your finger into the breech like so and push back on the bolt, and the bolt guide will slide out the back. And you just grab the bolt guide, out it comes, put your finger in, out will come the bolt and the bolt spring, and then that is pretty much empty, and that's what's left. Now before we get into the pieces I've just removed, okay, what we're now going to take a look at is the main operating system for the Mini, and it really is very simple, but there's a couple of very important things to note. And I said Mini, I mean Mini or TM7. There are some differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well. One of the most important things is we're going to take the bolt off and take a look at it. Now the spring that goes on the front is actually conical, and when it goes onto the bolt it'll snap over the shoulder and into place and keep the bolt on. See, the bolt's not falling off. And it's really important that that spring is put on correctly. If the spring isn't put on correctly, you may have erratic velocity, and the gun won't shoot as smoothly or as well. If the spring's on the wrong way round, you'll see it doesn't snap onto the shoulder, it doesn't stay in place, and the bolt will just fall out of the spring. Okay? So it's real important to make sure that that spring is on correctly and snapped over the shoulder of the bolt. Now the O-rings that we have on here, we have two O-rings on the back and we have the bumper / O-ring on the front of the bolt. These really don't tend to wear very much. I have a gun that's done about 350,000 shots without any wear issues on those, but it's a good idea to keep them nicely lubricated. Don't over lubricate them, but you just want to have a nice sheen of lube on there. If the gun starts shooting erratically and not cycling properly, it's almost always because the drivetrain, the valve, the bolt is getting dirty and it needs a good clean. When you come to clean and lubricate the gun, do not just put more lube onto a dirty gun. Make sure you take a clean cloth, something that's lint free, and wipe away all of the dirt and all of the old lube before you put more fresh, nice, clean lube on there. Real important, otherwise it won't actually make any difference to the gun, and it'll be performing exactly the same as when you took it out to actually do the maintenance. So clean off the dirt, put nice fresh lube on there. These O-rings don't tend to wear, and you don't even tend to notice when they do wear, so it's not normally too much of an issue. You have O-rings on the bolt guide at the front here, there's 3. There's 1 at the back which works as a bumper for the bolt, and then you have 2 on the bolt. Now the TM7 Bolt is slightly longer than a Mini's, but it works in identical fashion. Sometimes people put an aftermarket bolt into these guns and the guns don't work as well. We keep very tight tolerances on the bolts and we hand fit them in manufacturing. So if there's an aftermarket part that's not working, put it back to stock. If it works, stick with the stock system. It's set up very, very well, and we do a lot of work to make sure that it keeps working that way. Okay, so I'm going to take the bolt and the bolt spring off, and we're going to take a look at the bolt guide and the back of the gun. Now, fine-tuning of the velocity is done when the gun's together by putting an Allen key into these holes in the adjuster at the back and just adjusting how much the poppet opens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely unscrew that and take out the adjuster. And as I mentioned, the adjuster just controls how much the poppet can open and how much gas it can let out of the valve, and thus what your velocity is. And it's a very simple part, just a threaded piece, comes out the back and gets put down. And then what we're going to have is the poppet. Now there's a couple of different ways to get this out. I like to put an Allen key down in through one of the large openings in the side, one of the large ports, and push down carefully and gently on the brass piece, and then put it straight through and carefully just push down on the face, and then it should drop out of the bottom. Now all new TM7s and all new Minis come with a poppet that looks like this. You have a little silver spring in the back, which helps to make sure that even when the gas isn't in the gun and you're transporting the gun, that the poppet doesn't move back and cause blow through of gas through the gun. So we have that little silver spring which just biases the poppet, and then we have a new design of poppet here with a replaceable front seal, and that will just screw on and off. If the front seal is okay and it's not damaged, I don't recommend taking this off and putting it back on, just leave it as it is. But you can actually get these front seals as replacements, and they come in our spares kits, and if you have a problem with a leak through the gun, which when you adjust the adjuster all the way in still happens, then it's almost always this little face seal on the front, and it's simply unscrew that with a pair of pliers, carefully by hand screw the new one back on, make sure it seats and you're good. One thing to note here is the O-ring on the back. Again, very rarely goes bad. If it does go bad, you'll have a gun that is shooting but low velocities. So you're shooting at 180 to 200 psi on the reg, everything else seems good, but your velocity is low. And what's happening is that air is coming past this O-ring and the whole system of the gun isn't working because we're not able to remove gas from behind the poppet here, so the poppet doesn't open properly and you don't get velocity. So if you're getting very low velocities, then this is the O-ring to check. What you also have here is a very small hole that you're not going to be able to see on camera, but a little pinhole that goes through the poppet. Now that is what transfers the gas from the front to the back of the poppet. Again, if that hole is blocked, you're going to have issues because the gun won't seal back up. So it's very important not to get too much grease or any dirt into that little pinhole, because that transfers the gas from the front of the poppet to the back. Okay, once we've taken a look at that, that pretty much is the whole of the gun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you back through putting it all together and making sure it goes together correctly, and we'll finish up by doing that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our poppet. We're going to make sure that that O-ring is nicely but lightly lubricated. As long as it feels greasy to your fingers and there's no nicks or problems with that O-ring, you should be good. And we're simply going to drop that into the back of the bolt guide. Now it probably won't go all the way down, so I like to put my finger in behind it, push it forwards, and make sure that the bolt guide goes, the poppet goes all the way in against the face inside the bolt guide. Then we're going to take the adjuster. Okay, and we're simply going to line that up and screw it all the way in. Now what you want to do is you want to screw it all the way in until it stops, and what it's done there is it's bottomed out against the poppet and bottomed out the poppet against the face seal. That's all the way in. And then you want to back it out, whoops, you want to back it out 3/4 to 1 full turn, and that should get you to velocity when you first set up the gun, and then you can just fine tune it when the gun's set up and at the chrono range with paint. So I just take it, run it round, 1 turn out, and there we are, we're good. We're going to make sure that these O-rings on the bolt guide are nicely lubricated and that it's clean. We're going to put the bolt on, making sure that the bolt spring is snapping over the bolt and holding in place. Okay, so it's like so. And then we're going to assemble this back into the main body of the gun. Now there's an alignment pin, little silver pin on the back of the body here, which has to align with a hole in the back of the bolt guide. And it's very important that that lines up and that it slides over that pin, and stays in place with no gap between the bolt guide ridge and the main body. So hold it in with a finger. You're going to take the screw with the shoulder on it, and that screw is going to go into the back, and then we're simply going to tighten that down and tighten it down snug.